What habit would you say most positively impacts your life?
I think it's the daily morning workout. That has been a complete game changer. It's made me feel healthier, younger. It's made me not go out late. And it came from one simple thing, which is everybody says, I don't have time, right? Basically, whenever you throw any so-called good habit at somebody, they'll have an excuse for themselves. And usually the most common is, I don't have time. And I don't have time is just another way of saying it's not a priority. So what you really have to do is to say, is it a priority or not? And if something is your number one priority, then you will get it. That's just the way life works. But if you've got a fuzzy basket of 10 or 15 different priorities, you're going to end up getting none of them. So what I did there was I basically just said, my number one priority in life, above my happiness, above my family, above my work, is my own health. And it starts with my physical health. And then second is my mental health. And then third is my spiritual health. And then it's my family's health. Then it's my family's well-being. And then after that, I can go out and do whatever I need to do to the rest of the world. So there's a series of concentric circles starting out for me. And so because my physical health became my number one priority, then I could never say I don't have time. So in the mornings, I just work out. And however long it takes is how long it takes. And I do not start my day. And I don't care if the world is imploding and melting down. It can wait another 30 minutes until I'm done working out.
And do you take any breaks from that, or is that every day?
It's pretty much every day. There are a few days where I've had to take a break because I'm traveling or I'm injured or sick or something. But I can count on one hand the number of breaks I take every year.
You mentioned happiness being one of your top priorities. What is happiness to you? Like, what does that mean? What does that word mean? Can you unpack that?
Yeah, it's a very evolving thing. I think like all the great questions, when you're a little kid and you go to your mom and you say, "What happens when we die? Is there a Santa Claus? Is there a God? Should I be happy? Who should I marry?" Those kinds of things. There are no glib answers to that because there are no answers that apply to everybody. So these questions, the search for truth, these kinds of questions, they ultimately do have answers, but they have personal answers. So the answer that works for me is going to be nonsense to you and vice versa. So whatever happiness means to me, it means something different to you and it means something different to the listener. But I think it's very important to explore what it is. And for some people, I know it's a flow state. For some people, it's satisfaction. For some people, it's a feeling of contentment. My definition keeps evolving. So the answer I would have given you a year ago would be different than what I tell you now. But today, I believe that happiness it's really a default state. It's what's there when you remove the sense that something is missing in your life. And we are highly judgmental survival and replication machines. We're constantly walking around thinking, I need this, I need that, trapped in a web of desires. And happiness is that state when nothing is missing. And when nothing is missing, your mind shuts down and your mind stops running into the future or running into the past to regret something or to plan something. And then in that absence for a moment, you have internal silence. And when you have internal silence, then you are content and you're happy. I think people believe mistakenly, and feel free to disagree because again, it's different for everybody. But people believe mistakenly that happiness is about positive thoughts and positive actions. But the more I've read, the more I've learned, the more I've experienced, because I verify this for myself. Every positive thought essentially holds within a negative thought. Is a contrast to something negative. The Tao Te Ching says this more articulately than I ever could, but it's all duality, polarity. So if I say I'm happy, that means that I was sad at some point. If I say he's attractive, then that means that somebody else is unattractive. So every positive thought even has a seed of a negative thought within it, and vice versa. Which is why a lot of greatness in life comes out of suffering. You have to view the negative before you can aspire to and then appreciate the positive. So all of that said, long-winded, to me, happiness is not about positive thoughts. It's not about negative thoughts. It's about the absence of desire, especially the absence of desire for external things. And so the fewer desires I can have, the happier I can, or the more I can accept the current state of things, the less my mind is moving, because the mind really exists in motion towards the future or the past. The more present I am, the happier and more content I will be. But if I latch onto that, if I say, "Ooh, I'm happy now and I want to stay happy," then I'm going to drop out of that happiness, because now suddenly the mind is moving, it's trying to attach to something, it's trying to create a permanent situation out of a temporary situation. So happiness to me is mainly not suffering, not desiring, not thinking too much about the future or the past, really embracing the present moment and the reality of what is the way it is. Because nature has no concept of happiness or unhappiness. To a tree, there is no right or wrong, there is no good or bad. Nature follows unbroken mathematical laws and a chain of cause and effect from the Big Bang to now. And everything is perfect exactly the way it is. It's only in our particular minds that we're unhappy or not
Hmm.
happy, and things are perfect or imperfect because of what we desire. But I think I've also come to believe in the complete and utter insignificance of the self. And I think that helps a lot. Like, for example, if you thought you were the most important thing in the universe, then you would have to bend the entire universe to your will. Because if you're the most important thing in the universe, then how could it not conform to your desires? And if it doesn't conform to your desires, something's wrong. However, if you view yourself as a bacteria or an amoeba, or if you view all of your works as writing on water or building castles in the sand, then you have no expectation from how life should actually be. Life is just the way it is. And then you sort of accept that and you have no cause to be happy or unhappy. Those things almost don't apply. And what you're left with in that neutral state is not neutrality. I think people think, oh, that would be a very bland existence. No, this is the existence that little children live. And if you look at little children, on balance, they're generally pretty happy. Because they're really immersed into the environment in the moment without any thought of how it should be given their personal preferences and desires. So I think the neutral state is actually a perfection state, and one can be very happy as long as one isn't too caught up in their own heads.
What does your internal monologue go like when you find yourself trying to attach to something by default?
Yeah, I try to keep an eye on my internal monologue. It doesn't always work, but in the computer programming sense, I try to run my brain in debugging mode as much as possible. And when I'm talking to someone, like I'm talking to you right now, or when I'm engaged in a group activity, it's almost impossible because your brain has too many things to handle. But if I'm by myself, like just this morning, I'm brushing my teeth and I start thinking forward to the podcast. And I started going through this little fantasy where I imagined you asking me a bunch of questions and I was fantasy answering them. And then I caught myself. I put my brain in debug mode and just watched every little instruction go by. And I said, why am I fantasy future planning? Why can't I just stand here and brush my teeth? Right. And it's just the awareness that my brain was running off in the future and planning some fantasy scenario out of ego, that I was like, well, do I really care? If I embarrass myself on Shane's podcast, who cares? I'm going to die anyway. This is all going to go to zero and I won't remember anything. So this is pointless. So at that point, I shut down. I went back to brushing my teeth. And then I was noticing how great the toothbrush was and how good it felt. And then next moment, I'm off to thinking something else. And then I have to look at my brain again and say, do I really need to solve this problem right now? And the reality is that 95% of what my brain runs off and tries to do, I don't need to tackle at that exact moment. In fact, if it's like a muscle, then I'll be better off resting it, being at peace, and then when the particular problem arises, immerse myself in it. So what I would rather dedicate myself to is, for example, right now as we're talking, to be completely lost in the conversation and to be 100% focused on this, as opposed to thinking about, oh, when I brush my teeth, did I do it the right way, or planning something else in my mind. So I think the ability to singularly focus is related to the ability to lose yourself and be present, happy, and actually, ironically, more effective.
That's fascinating. It's almost like a relativity issue where you're taking yourself out of a certain frame and you're just moving over to another frame and watching things from a different perspective, even you're in your own mind.
Yeah, I think that a lot of for example, what Buddhists talk about as awareness versus the ego, what they're really talking about is you can think of your brain, your consciousness as a multi-layered mechanism. And there's kind of a core base kernel level OS that's running. And then there's applications that are running on top. And I like to think of it as, computer geek speak. I'm actually going back to my awareness level OS, which is always calm, always peaceful, and generally happy and content. And I'm trying to stay in that mode and not activate the monkey mind, which is always worried and frightened and anxious, but serves incredible purpose. But I'm trying not to activate that program until I need it. Because when I need it, I want to just focus on that program. But if I'm running it 24/7 all the time, I'm wasting energy. It's just and it becomes me, and I am more than that, right? I think like another thing that spirituality or religion or Buddhism or anything you follow will teach you over time is that you are more than just your mind. You are more than just your habits. You're more than just your preferences. Your level of awareness. You're a body. And modern humans, we don't live enough in our body. We don't live enough in our awareness. We live too much in this internal monologue in our heads. All of which, by the way, is just programmed into you by society and by the environment from when you were younger. You're basically a bunch of hardware, DNA, written, that then reacted to environmental effects when you were younger. And then you recorded the things that were good and bad, and you use that to prejudge everything that's going to be thrown against you. And then you're using that to constantly try and predict and change the future. But as you get older and older, the sum of these preferences that you've accumulated is very, very large. And some of these reactions, habitual reactions that you've accumulated is very, very large. And then they end up as runaway freight trains that control your mood. Well, we should control our own moods. Why don't we study how to control our moods? What a masterful thing that would be if you could say, well, right now I would like to be in the curious state. And then you can genuinely set yourself into the curious state. Or you say, I want to be in a mourning state. I'm mourning a loved one and I want to grieve for them, but I really want to grieve. I really want to feel that. I don't want to be distracted right now by my computer programming problem that's due tomorrow. So I think that the mind itself is a muscle, and it can be trained and it can be conditioned. It has just been haphazardly conditioned by society out of our control. And if you look at it with awareness and intent, and it's a 24/7 job, you're working on it every moment of every day, I think you can unpack your own mind and your emotions and your thoughts and your reactions. You can start reconfiguring, you can start rewriting this program to what you want.